today I kind of want to get into adrenals and cortisol and talk a little bit more about adrenal fatigue because that seems to be something that whenever I do talk about on social media, a lot of you are interested in and questions about. So I just want to explain the very basics of it all in this video. I don't want to go off too much like on a tangent because it's a broad subject, but I know a lot of you have questions and you want to understand it better. So I kind of want to try to teach you in the most basic way about adrenal fatigue and cortisol levels. And when I learn, I like to kind of dumb things down so that I can learn it and apply it. I don't really need to know like the scientific terminology behind hormones. I just kind of want to know how can I take that and actually apply it and learn from it. So that's also how I'm going to try to explain things in these videos. I'm by no means a doctor or trying to be a doctor. So if you're here looking for medical terminology and the science behind it to that extent, that's not the right video for you. So anyway, let's just jump in. So what you really need to understand is we all produce cortisol and we all need cortisol to function and live. It's not a bad thing, even though it can have some negative consequences and side effects, but cortisol in general it's what keeps you alive. So it's not a bad production that our body does. It's how we live. So we produce cortisol under stressful situations. So if you take an animal, for example, like a cat running from a dog, the cat is fearing for its life. So it's running, so it produces huge amounts of cortisol, also known as adrenaline, to get away from the dog. So when this happens, basically your body, you guys have probably heard of the fight or flight mechanism, and basically what that means is your body goes into like a protection mode where it says, okay, I'm running for my life, I need to save myself, so nothing matters except for getting away from this dog if you're a cat. So what happens in those instances is your body pushes all its blood to the muscle tissue to run or sprint to get away. So basically the brain in your blood, or the blood in your brain, the blood in your organs, all of that disperses and it just goes to the places that you need to function physically. It does not care about cognitive ability. It does not care about reproductive organs. It doesn't care about, any of your essential endocrine system working properly. It more so cares about how are you going to physically function to keep yourself alive in this situation. So that is how cortisol affects us. So when we have huge spikes of cortisol from stress and your body does not understand the difference between stresses that are mental and stresses that are physical, they both produce cortisol. So you might not be running for your life, but if you have a stressful situation at work, or you hate a coworker and you don't get along, or you're in a relationship and you're stressed out about it all the time, you have high levels of cortisol. So the same thing is happening in your body constantly, that running for your life, the same hormonal imbalances are happening that running for your life would make happen inside of you, but you're not running for your life. So in our daily lives, we have a lot of stress, and unfortunately a lot of people don't take the time to slow down, and most of us don't take the time to meditate and slow down and really bring our cortisol levels down and relax. And this goes hand in hand with adrenal issues, because if you have high elevated levels of cortisol for long periods of time when it should be low, then your adrenal glands, which sit on top of your kidneys, eventually say, well, I'm producing all of this cortisol all of the time, so I'm basically going to stop producing it, because they run out of production because you're just over exhausting them. That's why it's called adrenal exhaustion or adrenal fatigue. So along with this, there's many things that can make this problem worse. One of them is dieting in general, because when we diet and we reduce our caloric intake, then our metabolism takes a hit, which your adrenal glands and your metabolism, everything's related in your body. It's all connected. So anytime, something's malfunctioning, it's going to throw off other things from functioning correctly. And if you're dieting, that's stress on the body, that's stress on the metabolism. So the metabolism reacts by slowing down. So that can also, you know, make adrenal issues worse. It can make cortisol higher. Along with that, you know, lack of sleep, which many of us do not get enough sleep, or lack of quality sleep. Those things play a huge role in adrenal issues. Overdoing stimulants or abuse of stimulants, so fat burners, pre-workouts, you know, caffeine, chocolate, green tea extract, all of that, they all are stimulants, and they're all hard on our body because basically it's putting a synthetic energy into your system. So instead of your body being like, I'm going to produce my own energy, you're getting all this synthetic energy, and so therefore your body says, I'm not going to produce energy anymore, and that also can affect your adrenal glands. So a lot of things can affect adrenals along with cortisol production. And I think the thing that's most misconceived by a lot of people in terms of adrenal fatigue is the stages of it. And so I want to touch on that a little bit and kind of like clarify how that works, because it took me a long time to understand it. And you know, I knew when I was diagnosed in 2014 that I was in stage 3 adrenal fatigue. There's 4 stages, obviously, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is like adrenal exhaustion, where your adrenals are like burnt out and really not wanting to come back to life. So what happens in stage 1 and 2 is actually high elevated levels of cortisol that are chronic. So meaning that you have a lot of cortisol all the time. Instead of your cortisol naturally being high in the morning and it kind of dips in the afternoon, it goes up again and it comes back down at night, which allows you to go to sleep, your cortisol is chronically high. So stages 1 and 2 is chronically high elevated cortisol levels, and this is the stages where you feel like your head is going 100 miles an hour all the time, your focus is really off because you're thinking about things all day long, you get really agitated, you have ADHD-like symptoms, you can't sleep because you have elevated levels of cortisol at night when it should be low, so you're waking up in the middle of the night, you can't go back to sleep, you just feel stressed out. That's all elevated cortisol. So that's stages 1 and 2. When you're in those stages, you might not even realize you're in those stages, and that is how you get to stages 3 and 4, is you have chronically elevated cortisol over the long term. So basically, when you keep your cortisol high like that and you're stressed out and you're not doing anything to bring it back down and give your body a break from producing, then stages 3 and 4 means that now our body's not going to produce the right amounts of cortisol, so we have chronically low levels of cortisol. This is when you're very tired. You want to sleep all day long. Stimulants do nothing to you anymore. You can drink coffee and go to sleep. That was me. This is the stage where you're just like, your body's done. Your body's like, I'm over it. You pushed me too hard, so I'm going to crash and burn stage. You feel like shit, essentially, like really bad. So that's kind of how the stages work. And that's kind of something I wanted to explain, because a lot of people ask me, you know, well, what are the symptoms? Well, it depends what stage you're in, because the symptoms are different for every stage of adrenal exhaustion or adrenal fatigue. Hey guys, I had to run. I had a coffee meeting with a friend I had to run to. So anyway, I'm back now, and I wanted to get back into following up what I was saying earlier about adrenal fatigue and cortisol. And basically, I just want to explain, because after I kind of put this information out there, a lot of times the feedback is just like, how do I know if I have adrenal fatigue? And people want to know kind of, can you self-diagnose? And if you can't, what do you do? So there's tons of symptoms that can be adrenal related. So it's hard to say like everything's coming from adrenal fatigue, but everything can stem from adrenal fatigue. Headaches can stem from adrenal fatigue. Lack of focus can stem from adrenal fatigue. Having a hard time losing weight. The list goes on and on, because everything in your body is connected. All your systems work together. So there are a few tests. There's a light test that you can do with your pupils that can kind of give you some more insight on if your cortisol is working accurately. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but you can look it up. There's also a saliva test that apparently you can spit in a cup of water and look at your saliva, and the way that it like drips down tells you about your cortisol levels. And then of course, like self-diagnosis, just how you're feeling. If you're feeling super run down, like you are just so tired all the time, you might be in those stage 3, 4 levels of adrenal fatigue. But really, the only way of really knowing for sure if you have adrenal or cortisol issues is to have a hormone test done. Now, I always say that you should have it tested through saliva, and the reason being is because, like I said earlier, your cortisol levels change throughout the day. So they're supposed to be higher in the morning. That's why we wake up, is high cortisol or adrenaline, and they're supposed to be low at night. That's why we can go to sleep. So if you test through blood, most of the time they're going to take a blood draw 1 time a day. So depending on when you take that blood draw, it's only going to show you what your cortisol is doing right then and at that point in time. So the reason that saliva is a better method is because you can see, it's easier to see how your adrenal or your cortisol levels are changing throughout the day or over a period of time. So technically you could test adrenals through blood and it be accurate, but you would have to take multiple blood draws throughout the day over a period of time, and nobody wants to do that. So the reason that cortisol testing through saliva is so much easier is because you just spit in a little tube, you do it 3 or 4 times a day over the period of 2 or 3 days, and then that way you can see a pattern in how your cortisol is responding and if it is how it should be. So that's the best and most accurate way to do it. If your doctor says they'll do a saliva test and they test your saliva 1 time a day, that's not going to tell you anything. That's just like doing a blood draw. So make sure that if you get it done, you ask for a saliva sample where they're looking at your cortisol at different periods throughout the day. And it's mind-blowing how many doctors don't even know this. I've had many clients who, they go to their doctor, they ask for a blood panel to look at the rest of their hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, all that can be looked at through blood. And then they ask for a cortisol test. Even if they ask for it through saliva, their doctor literally takes it 1 time a day. And I'm like, what does that do? It does nothing. Why did you pay for that? So anyway, that's what I'm going to end this with today. I don't want to go too far off on a tangent because I don't want to get some of you lost in the mix of everything. But I'll definitely revisit this subject. I just wanted to kind of get on here and explain a little bit more about cortisol and adrenals so that you guys can understand it better. As always, guys, if you like these videos, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment if you want. I respond to all the comments. If you guys want to let me know what else you'd like to see, that's helpful. But the more engagement I get, the more likely I am to put out more videos. So don't forget to like it and subscribe to my channel. Thanks.